Today I'm going to show you how to do an inlay. It's a very simple process. What it involves is removing material from a part of your project and putting something else in its place. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to inlay this thin slice of aspen burl into the front of a project. And in this case, it's the front of this little box. So let's get started and I'll show you how to do this. It doesn't take much in the way of tools and material to do an inlay. I have my router equipped with a plunge base. That's probably the biggest piece of equipment that you need for this, and of course the most expensive. The plunge base is important so that you have control over the depth of your inlay, because the material is going to vary depending on what you're doing. You're going to need a straight bit. You can use like a spiral cut bit. In this case, I'm just going to use a simple 1/8 inch bit. This one's made by Freud. We could switch between a thicker bit like a 1/4 inch, but I'm going to stick with an 1/8 inch straight bit just to make this demo simple. I'm going to need my wrenches for my router. I'm going to need a little bit of super glue, a pencil, X-Acto knife, your material for which you're going to inlay, and then either some painter's tape or some two-sided tape. Now what I'm going to do for this demo is I'm going to put my tapered side down. This burl has a little bit of a taper to it, so I'm going to put that down so it fits into my material. And I'm going to go ahead and take a little piece of tape. Now if you're using two-sided tape, it's just a matter of sticking this on the back. But in this case, all I'm going to do is roll up a little piece of painter's tape, stick it on the back of my burl, and then figure out how I want this to be positioned on the box front or whatever part of your project you're working with. And for this, I've already drawn a little bit of a center line. I want to get this pretty well centered in there, and then I'm going to secure it into place. And that painter's tape does a good job of holding it. It just has to be for a little bit. And then the next thing you want to do is you want to get a nice sharp X-Acto knife. And you're going to take your time on this. This is going to be a little bit time consuming, but I want to keep my X-Acto knife straight up with the edge of this burl, and I want to go around and I want to score the wood so that I know exactly where this is going to be positioned. Okay, once you're satisfied that you've done a good job of going around there, go ahead and take your piece off carefully. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around one more time. I've already made my marks with my X-Acto knife, but now I'm going to go and score them down just a little bit deeper. Now that I have my final scoring, I'm just going to come around with a pencil and just kind of shade in and try and trace in there so that I can better see where my marks are when I start to route. And just get it to where you think you'll be able to see it good enough as you start to route. Each router is going to be a little bit different, but I'm going to set my depth to the thickness of my material. Here you can see my material right on the base of my router, and I've set this to where I'm happy with it. Again, I know I'm going to have to sand this flush depending on your material. If it's cut perfectly flat, then you want to set this so it's just a tiny bit proud of your surface so that you can scrape it and get a nice final sanding on it. So I'm pretty pleased with that. I have mine locked down into place. So let's get this thing clamped down and I'll show you how to actually do the routing. Alright, we got our piece clamped down. I have two quick clamps on either side here holding this. I want to make sure this is secure and not going to slip around under the power of the router. My router is a variable speed. I'm going to start it at about 16,000 to 18,000 revolutions per minute and see how that's cutting. I may need to make an adjustment to that as I start to remove the material. I'm not doing that deep of a cut, so that should be just fine. Couple of things about safety when you're using your plunge router. Make sure that when you set it down on the table, you have the plunge base so that it's in the extended or up position. That way your bit doesn't make contact with your work surface and spin out of control. I always wear my safety glasses when I'm doing this. I also do a really good job of keeping my ear protection on, and I have my dust mask. Especially for this, I have my air purification system turned off for volume here in the shop. So I'm going to wear my dust mask while I'm doing this. It's a pretty intimate operation here. You're going to be very close to your work surface. So I'm going to make sure that I have all my safety gear on. As you can see, I've started removing a lot of material, and I'm down to probably 1 router bit thickness away from my edge. So now's when I need to really slow down, and I need to make sure that I'm just separating that material inside the inlay from the material right along that cut mark that we made. Alright, we've done our last pass there. We're still going to have a little bit of cleanup work to do. I've never gotten one right the very first time I've done it. So let's go ahead and get our inlay. I can see right there I'm going to have to come back and get a little bit there. But let's see how close we are. Now be very careful on this step. If the inlay is done correctly, it's going to be very snug. And sometimes if your piece is perfectly flush with the surface and you push it back in there, you're not going to get that piece back out of there. So let's just do a careful fit, and we can always go back. And that almost drops in there just like it should. Alright, that should do it. Let's go ahead and do another test fit. Again, being careful not to put your piece in there too far so that you can't get it out. Okay, now we're ready to secure this. I like to use a thick CA glue to secure these inlays. It gets in all the nooks and crannies and does a really nice job of adhering these little pieces. Make sure everything's cleared out of there, and then go ahead and press it into place. My inlay is secured inside of my box front. So now what I want to do is I want to come back and I want to fill in the gaps here between the cherry that I'm working with and the aspen burl that we've put into. The more you practice, the better you'll get at reducing the size of those gaps. I'm still learning, just like a lot of folks out there. So you're going to have some gaps. You're going to have some places where maybe you didn't trace clean enough, or you might have did a little slip with the router. So we can go ahead and fill those to give us as seamless a transition as possible. So we're going to go back to the CA glue. Try and use this stuff in a ventilated area or have a little fan blowing. We're going to go ahead and go around with CA glue around the outside. I like to use the thick. It fills in and has better gap filling properties than the thin, which just kind of runs everywhere. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come back with 100 grit sandpaper and actually make a slurry, and that'll help force some of that sawdust into the cracks and help blend that together. As you can see, the CA glue was able to fill in those cracks for us. The burl really highlights this piece, gives it a little different look to it, and gives us a nice seamless transition between the cherry box front and the burl inlay. And as you can see, it's flush with the surface. So there you have it. This is our inlay video on how to get an aspen burl inlaid into the front of a cherry box. Stay tuned for more videos coming to you from A-Frame Woodworking. If you have questions or comments or would like to check out our latest projects, please visit us online at www.aframewoodworking.com. Thanks for watching. See you back here soon.